Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee and Mysteries. So, I'm going to label this video as the most difficult story I've ever attempted to tell. And I've told some pretty complicated stories. But there are so many characters in the story of Lori Vallow Daybell that it's really difficult to tell. So let's start with a timeline and see if we can nail down a timeline for this. So, Lori has a first marriage that ends in divorce, and she has custody of her daughter from that marriage, who is now 17. That girl's name is Tylee. She's one of the missing Idaho kids. She's 17 years old. Lori then married a man named Vallow, Charles Vallow, and her and Charles had a child together. And so they had a mixed family. JJ is the child from the Vallow marriage, Lori and Charles Vallow's child. And Tylee is JJ's half-sister, his older half-sister. So Tylee and JJ are the ones missing, all right? And so Lori Vallow apparently is going through this rough patch with her husband. They're talking divorce. They split up. Her and Charles Vallow split up. And Vallow comes over to the house to see Tylee and JJ, and to, I guess, get visitation. And some kind of altercation occurs, and Lori's brother Alex shoots her ex-husband, or soon-to-be ex-husband, to death, okay, in supposed self-defense, right? Now, let's pause there. This has occurred, and there's another incident now that involves an extended family member. So Lori Vallow is into this end times kind of well, it's occultish it's cultish, at least in a lot of ways, and it's kind of based around, or at least her fixation is based around, the ideas as purported by a man named Chad Daybell out of Idaho, a Latter-day Saints or a Mormon writer who has written several end-time books for the movement known as end-time Mormonism, which is a current movement kind of within the edges of the Mormon Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints out of Utah. So, Lori has a niece that's also into these beliefs with her. And so this is not her brother's kid who shot her husband, but another sibling's daughter, right? Follow? And so, when you look at Lori, and then you look at Lori's niece, there's a lot of similarities. They're both pretty blondes, maybe 10, 15 years difference, maybe 20 years difference in age. I'm not sure exactly. But, she probably definitely looks up to her aunt. And so they share these same kind of, what her ex-husband called kooky end-time beliefs, right? And they called it kind of a doomsday cult that they were involved in. And so Lori's niece also has an ex-husband that she has bad blood with. And right after Lori's husband is killed by her brother Alex, right, her niece's husband has an attempt on his life on the freeway coming home from work. So Lori's niece's husband, ex-husband, is on his way home when somebody pulls up beside him and attempts to shoot and kill him, shoots the window out of his car, right? But he doesn't see who did it. And then just a few days later, he's kind of hiding out over at his dad's house when his ex, Lori's niece, and Lori's brother Alex, the one who did the shooting in the other instance, shows up over at this guy's dad's house while he's there, kind of demanding entry. And the dad calls 911, and the 911 call's been released, where he's screaming at Alex and Lori's niece and telling them, you leave my son alone. Someone's already tried to kill him. We know it was you. And you're not allowed on this property. Get away from here. Get away from here. And he's on the phone with 911. And apparently they leave. And there's no more attempts on that man's life, right? Because shortly after this, right after Lori supposedly leaves town with JJ and Tylee, right? Then Lori's brother ends up dead under mysterious circumstances. And then almost at the same time, in October, when her brother dies on the bathroom floor, right? Then across the state line in Idaho, Charles Chad Daybell, who she's been talking to, this Latter-day Saints author, his wife mysteriously dies, right? And, you know, was she poisoned? Did they use the same poison to kill Alex, Lori's brother, the trigger man for all of this? And here's another interesting thing. Right before Tammy Daybell dies in her sleep in Idaho, right before Chad Daybell's wife dies, a mysterious man walks up to her while she's getting out of her car coming home from work, and he shoots at her with an empty paintball gun, which if you've ever shot your paintball gun empty, and if you're into that kind of thing, then you know it shoots a little smoke out, and it sounds almost like a subdued, silenced firearm, you know, pop, 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 pop. And then this guy just runs off, right? What was that about? That was right before she was found dead on the floor of her bedroom from a mysterious illness in her sleep. Now, at the time that Tammy Daybell, Chad Daybell's first wife, died, nobody was really all of that concerned about it. They just thought it was natural causes. The family, this is probably Chad, declined having any kind of autopsy, which is usually a normal thing for someone of that age. And she was buried without an autopsy. But after the Arizona police started coming around asking the Idaho police about these missing kids and about the death of Lori's ex-husband and how they've tied this to now potentially the death of Chad Daybell's first wife, Tammy, then they exhumed Tammy's body, and we're waiting now for the autopsy on how Tammy died. And I don't know about the status of the body and the investigation in Arizona surrounding Alex Cox, Lori's dead brother. But it would not surprise me if they didn't find some kind of toxic element in their bloodstream in both of those individuals. And because typically killers aren't as smart as they think they are. So this could potentially be kind of a killing spree that may or may not be done yet. Now, one of the things about the disappearance of Tylee and JJ is that JJ he's a special needs kid. So he had a service dog, a not very cheap service dog, a well-trained Labradoodle purchased for the purpose of being a service dog and trained by a certified dog trainer for the purpose of being a service animal for JJ. And apparently in September, when the family was supposedly moving from, and she's told several family members in emails and texts that have been released that she was starting over in Idaho, that she was going to have to move on after the death of her husband, and which has only been like 3 months. And then she supposedly splits. On her way out of town, according to this dog trainer, she stopped off and returned the dog to the original dog trainer, which was quite perplexing to him. Why does the boy no longer need his dog? I mean, if he needed a dog in Idaho, or in Utah rather, if he needed a dog in Arizona, then he needed a dog in Idaho as well. And so they returned the dog, and one of the peculiar things is that she was kind of concerned that Tylee might call him and inquire as to whether the dog found a good home or not. And she instructed this guy that if Tylee called her to make sure and tell her that the dog got a good home whether he did or not. And so this is very puzzling. And then you have the storage unit, which you see, I believe it was Alex helping her move right before his death, I suppose, because he died in October. And in September, there's video of her and another man going into and out of a storage unit. And what was found in this abandoned storage unit was all of the kids' possessions. You know, it wasn't any of Lori's stuff. It wasn't any of Charles Vallow, Lori's ex-dead husband's stuff. What was found in there was the kids' things, their toys, pictures, baby pictures. I can tell you right now, I'm sitting here looking at my kids' babies' pictures. I don't leave home without them. When I move, they go with me. So why did the kids not need their toys? Why did JJ not need his things? Why did JJ not need his dog anymore? I tell you one thing, special needs kids don't do well with that kind of disruption. His dad's already been killed, right? Now, his uncle died in October after this incident, so we don't know whether either of the kids know about their dead uncle yet, if they're still alive. And so, for him to be ripped out of his home, his toys stripped from him, and his dog given away does not bode well for his whereabouts. I'm just telling you that that's not something you do to a kid that that you intend on keeping. Does that make sense? I mean, they got rid of his things and his dog. What is that about? That is not good news for JJ, not at all. Now, I've got a couple of scenarios cooking here. One is these people are end-time psychos with some serious doctrinal issues, and they're Bonnie and Clyde in it, and they've got insurance money, and they're blowing it in Hawaii. They're spending the money of their children and family in Hawaii together right now. That's where they are right now, in Hawaii, with no sign of any children. And, she won't talk about where the kids are. Tylee's phone has been found. That's another odd thing that doesn't bode well for Tylee. What teenager gives up their phone willingly, right? It's a part of them. So her phone has turned up, and there was some text made from her phone to friends in October. This would be a month or better after they left Arizona for Idaho. But the texts don't seem to be really in Tylee's style, and they seem to be abbreviated, and it almost seems like somebody else was sending those text messages. So one potential thing is the dark side of this is that these two, either for religious reasons, murdered these two children, and for whatever reason justified the murdering of their spouses, and potentially this other woman's ex-husband as well, this niece's ex-husband as well. And this is somehow religiously motivated, or it's one of the oldest stories in the book. I mean, I remember recently in my lifetime, in the last 20 years or so, a story out of Oregon where a woman who had young children turned to a lesbian life, acquired a lesbian lover, and then didn't have use for her children anymore. And the two of them threw them off a bridge into the river in Oregon. I think there were 2 or 3 of them. They threw toddlers off this bridge. So did Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow have a midlife crisis? Did this fling them together? And in doing so, did they seek to get revenge on their family, on these men in their lives, right? And did he agree to kill his wife in Idaho in her sleep, right? So that they could be together on some weird honeymoon in Hawaii, and that's what we're seeing. And these kids are buried somewhere in the desert. That is one of the darkest concepts there. But let's give some hope to the children. My sister, she always has rose-colored glasses. She calls herself Debbie with the rose-colored glasses. And she always seems to find the bright side to any story. And she brought up an alternate theory I would like to share with you. We talk about the missing kids in Idaho. But Tylee, the girl, is 17. And my sister reminded me how strong-willed and independent 17-year-olds can be. And especially if they have a sibling who is a special needs child. I call my sisters, both of them, sister moms, because my mom abandoned me for work at a very tender age, as well, still in diapers, and handed me off to my 2 sisters who helped raise me. And so when Debbie heard this story, my sister, she thought, well, what if Tylee was aware of, Tylee and JJ saw the killing of their father and stepfather at the hands of their uncle. It happened right in front of them. It was JJ's ball bat that was supposedly the weapon that Alex Cox, Lori's brother, was defending himself against when he shot and killed Lori's husband. And that happened right in front of these kids. What kind of effect could this upheaval? She's given away our stuff. She's given away, JJ's dog, you're uprooting us, Dad's dead. Maybe they do or don't know that the uncle's been killed as well, or potentially died mysteriously, and that everything is just too scary and shaky for Tylee, who is becoming a woman now and sees herself responsible for young JJ. So my only hope that they're okay, honestly, at this point, is if my sister is right. If Tylee took it upon herself to protect her brother, and they abandoned all of their things, and she ditched her phone, and because she knows that those things could be used to ID them, and she went and got herself an underground job somewhere. Maybe they went to Reno, maybe they went to Vegas, maybe they went to some metropolis and have disappeared into it. Tylee posing as JJ's mother and providing for him by whatever means she can come up with, and potentially even willing, I suppose, to prostitute herself if necessary to make sure that she provided for this boy that she feels responsible for, her half-brother JJ, her special needs little brother that she's been so close with. So maybe Tylee has ran away, and maybe Lori is so self-involved in what's going on in this world-ruined relationship with Chad Daybell and their little honeymoon in Hawaii that she doesn't care to help people find out. And maybe even she thinks it's best if Tylee raises JJ instead of JJ's grandparents, that there's a rift there. And the grandparents have a real problem with Lori, for sure. Well, because her brother killed their son, right? So at least that's the way I understand the family relationships here. They're all so interwoven. But my hope is that maybe Tylee is protecting JJ, and they will at some point surface and come under the protection of the law while this story is told. And Tylee may be just holding out in secrecy until she turns 18 with some misguided hope that she would be granted custody of her special needs little brother. I'm afraid that may be their only hope, is that Tylee is the one who's disappeared them, and Lori's just not helping because she's in her own world right now. But then there's all those killings and attempted killings. It's all kind of weird, and none of it seems to bode too well. I will say this, it's all a mystery. Alright, well, if any new information comes to light, I'll make a third video about this, but hopefully this fills you in on the missing kids for now. We're watching this story very closely. Until next time on Coffee and Mysteries.